Welcome to Bite Size Bunny, my name's Tony, and today we're going to be doing a DC movie tier list. With James Gunn's Superman movie coming out later this year, I figured it'd be fun to go through and rank a bunch of the live-action, theatrically released DC movies before we get our first film entry in the new DC universe. Without much further ado, let's kick things off with Adam West's Batman film from 1966. Personally, I don't love this movie, but I do love Adam West as Batman. He is so charming in the role, and as far as live action iterations of the Batman character go, he is definitely on the higher end for me. I actually saw this film for the very first time recently, and I really appreciate and admire it. I absolutely understand the significance of this film. It just wasn't for me personally, and I'm going to be putting it up there in the C tier. Next up, we've got Superman the movie, and believe it or not, I actually just watched this film for the very first time recently as well, and even in 2025, it still makes for a great first watch. Christopher Reeve is brilliant as both Superman and Clark Kent. He plays these roles perfectly, and I love how drastically different his performance is with both of those characters. Really, the only thing I didn't love in this film was its take on Lex Luthor. I think there are so many other great elements here, but its villain is kind of underwhelming. With that being said, I'm going to be putting Superman up there at the A tier. As far as the other Superman movies go, though, I actually haven't seen any of them yet outside of Man of Steel. I'm actually hoping to do a first-time watch-through of all of those films before Superman releases later this year. So I'll probably do a ranking of the Superman films at some point down the road before that new film releases. But in the meantime, I'm going to have to put all of these movies into the did not see category. Batman 89. As someone that's not the biggest fan of Tim Burton's work, I was so surprised by how much I actually enjoyed this movie. Michael Keaton's Batman and Jack Nicholson's Joker work perfectly in the context of this film. I really like their dynamic and how they play off of each other. I love what both actors brought to these roles and how they really made them their own. I do think Batman 89 goes on a little too long, though. I do wish it was about 20 to 30 minutes shorter. With that being said, I'm going to be putting Batman 89 up there into B tier. While I was pleasantly surprised by Batman 89, unfortunately, I can't say the same thing about Batman Returns. In my personal opinion, Batman 89 feels like a Batman movie that happened to be directed by Tim Burton, while Batman Returns feels like a Tim Burton movie that happens to have Batman in it, which really didn't work for me. I will say though, I really enjoyed the romance between Batman and Catwoman. I thought it was the best part of this entire movie. Both actors have excellent chemistry. As far as where Batman Returns is going to be going on here, I'm going to put it in C tier as well, right above Batman 66. The one positive to come out of Batman Forever is that I will give Val Kilmer credit where credit is due. He is not a bad Batman, and I actually think that there was a lot of potential with his take on the character. Unfortunately, this movie really snubs him of that opportunity to actually get a fair shot at playing the Caped Crusader, and it's just downright obnoxious. There's no other redeeming qualities about this movie, so yeah, hello F tier. On the other hand, there are absolutely no redeeming qualities with Batman and Robin. The only good thing here is that eventually it ends and the pain is only temporary. This movie, if you can call it that, is just one big old toy commercial, and it easily works its way onto the low side of F tier. Spoiler alert for this next one, Catwoman is another easy F tier, but I would be lying if I said I didn't have fun with this movie. This is one of those movies that is genuinely impressive in regards to how bad it truly is. You can't convince me that any of the writers that worked on this project have ever picked up a comic book or did any research into who Catwoman actually is. They probably just saw the cover art and went, yep, we got this. I do think that this one is so bad that it's genuinely enjoyable. I would happily watch this movie again, especially for the basketball scene that is an iconic piece of cinema. And yeah, I'm gonna put Catwoman in F tier, but it's going to go to the highest end on F tier. It is above Batman and Robin as well as Batman Forever. I've always wanted to love Constantine. I have watched this movie so many times at this point, but it always feels like it's very middle of the road. It's not bad, it just doesn't really do anything to help make it stand out. I do think there's some great performances here. Keanu Reeves is a lot of fun to watch as Constantine. Tilda Swinton and Peter Stormare are both great in their respective roles. I just wish this one had a bit more of an impact for me. I'm gonna be putting it right there in seats here above Batman Returns. Batman Begins is so damn good. I don't feel like this movie is talked about enough because a lot of people focus on The Dark Knight and how much of a masterpiece that film is, but I really do think that Batman Begins may just be the best comic book origin story ever put to screen. What Christopher Nolan did with this take on the character is phenomenal. I love how he implemented the League of Shadows here and how pivotal of a role they have to play in Batman's backstory. Christian Bale may not be my favorite Batman, but he is without a doubt my favorite Bruce Wayne. And I do think they still do an excellent job at showcasing the stories of both characters. The music is on another level. Hans Zimmer has created some of the best theme songs for superheroes, and the Batman score is way up there. Liam Neeson and Cillian Murphy are on their A game here, and I just love this movie. This is going to go up there into A tier. It's gonna be on the really high side of things. What can I say about The Dark Knight that hasn't been said already? The fact that Christopher Nolan was even able to top Batman Begins to begin with is a feat on its own. And not only did he do that, but he also gave us one of the best crime dramas of all time. This is a work of genius. Everything is top tier here. Heath Ledger's Joker is one of the best performances ever. Then you've also got Aaron Eckhart, who is equally as good as Two-Face, and I really don't feel like his performance in this film gets anywhere near as much love as it deserves. And that opening bank heist, I could easily watch that sequence on loop. It is so good. The Dark Knight is an easy S tier. Next up, we've got Watchmen. We recently got an animated adaptation of Watchmen, which is really good, but I gotta be honest, I don't think anything is going to top Zack Snyder's adaptation of the source material. I really do think that this is as good as you will ever get with a live-action adaptation of Watchmen. When you watch this, it feels like the material is truly coming to life. It is unreal at times. It may be on the longer side of things, but man, is it a treat. I adore this film. I have ever since it released, and I still think it holds up to this day. I'm gonna be putting Watchmen in A tier. It's gonna go right below Batman Begins and above Superman. I'm not gonna lie, I always forget that Jonah Hex exists. I didn't see this one, so it will be going to the did not see category. Green Lantern, on the other hand, is a movie that I wish I could forget actually exists. I remember being in middle school when this movie was coming out and being so excited that Green Lantern of all characters was getting a live action movie. Then I watched it, and it is truly baffling just how bad this movie is. I'm gonna be putting Green Lantern in F tier. It's gonna go right below Catwoman. The Dark Knight Rises may not reach the heights of the previous installments in the Dark Knight trilogy, but it is still a really solid film, and the last 15 minutes of this movie is a perfect send-off for the character. I loved Tom Hardy as Bane. He has such a presence in this film. I also really enjoy Anne Hathaway as Catwoman. I thought she did an excellent job. Some of the reveals feel very obvious, and it does have some plot holes, but I do think they managed to make this one feel like it has the highest stakes out of all three movies. They do a good job at keeping you on the edge of your seat as you worry about the fate of Gotham as well as the fate of Batman. It's also got some of my favorite scenes out of the entire trilogy. I think The Dark Knight Rises is still a really good movie. I'm going to be putting it up there at B tier, right above Batman 89. And now we have entered the Snyderverse, kicking it off with Man of Steel. I actually really enjoy Man of Steel. Yes, it's got its issues, and that last act goes on way too long, but Henry Cavill is superb as Superman. Then you've got Michael Shannon as Zod, and I think he is one of the best comic book villains ever put on screen. Visually, this film is gorgeous as well, and you also got that Hans Zimmer score that is just immaculate. This one definitely makes its way up onto B tier for me. I'm gonna be putting it above Batman 89 and right below The Dark Knight Rises. Whew, we've got both versions of Batman versus Superman, and I'm gonna be blunt about this one. The theatrical cut of this film is hot garbage. It is a dumpster fire on wheels. It is an incohesive mess. Yes, It's got great performances and really solid moments, but there is so much lopped out of it that the whole movie really suffers because of it. Thanks to it having some of those great moments though, it does move out of F tier and it does get to be our first entry into D tier. The Ultimate Cut, on the other hand, I think is a far superior version of the film, and it's what we should have gotten all along. It's 30 minutes longer, and at the same time, it feels way better paced than the alternative version. One of my biggest issues with the theatrical cut of Batman vs. Superman is all of the character motives were just non-existent, and in the Ultimate Cut, you really do get to see both sides of Batman and Superman and understand their logic behind why they are going about things the way they are. Yes, you've still got Doomsday, which feels really tacked on at the very end. You've also got Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor, which isn't all that great, but it is a massive upgrade over that theatrical version. Personally, I think Batman vs. Superman, the Ultimate Cut, is also going to be going up there into B tier right below Man of Steel. The first Suicide Squad was such a missed opportunity. If we ever got the David Ayer cut of the film, I would happily watch it because there are some really great elements in this movie. For starters, I think a lot of the characters are perfectly casted. Outside of Jared Leto's Joker, I don't know what that was, but the overall product here just feels like the world's longest, most obnoxious trailer. It is horribly edited. The way the story unfolds here is so sloppy, and Enchantress is just a really unremarkable villain. I'm gonna be putting Suicide Squad in D tier. It's definitely going below Batman vs. Superman. I don't think it's bad enough to go into F tier thanks to some of those excellent performances, but that's really the only good thing here. Wonder Woman was the first truly great film in the DCEU. I love Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. I also feel like Chris Pine is phenomenal as Steve Trevor. The chemistry between the two characters is really charming. Not only do they do a great job with everything that takes place in Themyscira, but then once you get to the World War setting, it is also really well done. The trench scene is still one of my favorite moments in the DCEU. Every time it comes on, I still find myself getting really hooked and enthralled by the scene. Still occasionally get goosebumps to go along with it. It does kind of fall apart a little bit in the last act, but it's not bad. It just feels like your typical generic comic book movie ending, and that is pretty underwhelming since everything leading up to it is so special. But yeah, I think Wonder Woman easily goes into A tier, and I'm going to be putting it, I think, below Batman Begins and above Watchmen. That feels right. Justice League. Oh, lordy. When this film first came out, I actually enjoyed it as a Saturday morning cartoon that was turned into a live-action film. It was by no means a good movie, but as a massive fan of DC, I was just really happy to see all of my favorite superheroes on screen together for the very first time in a live-action movie format. But after getting the Snyder Cut and seeing just how stark of a difference there is between the two versions of the film, and seeing how much Joss Whedon totally butchered that original film, is just mind-boggling. I've tried rewatching this in the past couple of years, and it's definitely a much worse experience now knowing we have a substantially better version of the film out there. And honestly, with some of the behind-the-scenes drama, it's just kind of feels offensive. It definitely leaves a bad taste in my mouth. I do think Justice League goes to F tier. And honestly, at this point in time, I think I would rather watch Catwoman over Justice League. I think Justice League is a better movie, but I think I would have more fun watching Catwoman. Oh, Aquaman. You mean they executed her because she had me? Oh my lord, this movie. Alrighty. So Aquaman is the DCEU movie that feels the most like an MCU movie, but also one of the bad MCU movies. Okay, maybe not bad, just one of the more mediocre ones. Bad's kind of harsh. Jason Momoa is great in this role. I think what he does with the Aquaman character really helped redefine Aquaman and make him interesting. But there's just way too much going on in this film. You've got the Black Manta story, which is actually interesting, but it doesn't really go anywhere. You've got his story with his brother, which is well done, but in the context of the film, it's just another storyline in an overbloated film that doesn't really get the attention that it deserves. And then you've got his horrible romance with Queen Mira. And really, it's just because there's no chemistry between the two actors, and it's just awkward to watch at times. It's not my favorite DCEU movie. I wouldn't say it's a bad movie. It's just so there. It is very generic. It's so paint by numbers. It could have been something great, but the final product is just very fine. I'm gonna put in seats here right below Batman 66. Shazam is so delightful. I love how this film feels like a 2000s comic book movie in the best way possible. It very much reminds me of the Sam Raimi films. Definitely not as good as the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, for the record. I'm just talking about the tone and how it balances its humor with the more darker elements of the story. I do think Zachary Levi does a really solid job as the titular character, and the family story in this movie is really endearing and fun to watch. Again, when you get to that last act, it's pretty underwhelming. It falls into the same trap as a lot of these DCEU movies do, but it doesn't take away from the experience too much. I think Shazam deserves to go into A tier. I'm gonna put it on the lower end though. It's gonna go right below Superman. I love Joker. I thought that it was an excellently crafted film with such a refreshing, unique take on the character that worked really well as an Elseworld story. Sure, it's Taxi Driver, but that doesn't really take away from the movie for me personally. I love the unique take on Gotham, as well as giving us a story that's kind of making you guess what's actually real and what's fabricated. Joaquin Phoenix is brilliant as Joker. He for sure earned that Oscar. I will never forget watching that last 30 to 40 minutes in theaters for the very first time and just being blown away by where they were taking this story and how far they were going with things. When he fully becomes the Joker, his performance is so captivating. It is such a mesmerizing transformation, and it just makes for a haunting finale. I think Joker is one of the best DC movies, probably one of the best comic book movies ever made, and I'm gonna put it up there at S tier, right below The Dark Knight. I really don't get the hate for Birds of Prey. I love this movie so much, and I think it's one of the best films in the DCEU. This has my favorite performance from Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn. She has always been perfect in this role, but I think this has my favorite take on the character. The action is a lot of fun to watch. The choreography is great, and it is extremely violent and brutal. The comedy elements worked really well for me personally, and Ewan McGregor as Black Mask is top tier. He absolutely chews the scenery as this character. I didn't love the Cassandra Cain character in this film. Just this specific interpretation of the character didn't work for me personally, but I love just about everything else in this movie. I am going to be putting Birds of Prey in A tier, and I think, yeah, I'm going to be putting it right below Batman Begins and above Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman 84 is one of the most disappointing sequels of all time. That first trailer for Wonder Woman 84 to Blue Monday was amazing. I couldn't have been more excited for this movie leading up to its release. Then I watched it on Christmas Day thanks to it releasing on HBO Max, and my disappointment was immeasurable. It really comes off like they had no clue what to do in regards to a sequel to one of their best films so far, and so they were just kind of throwing things at a wall and seeing what stuck. The romance between Wonder Woman and Steve Trevor, or reincarnated Steve Trevor that isn't actually Steve Trevor, it's just Steve Trevor's ghost inside some random dude's body, is so problematic and creepy for a plethora of reasons. The story is so messy, the direction feels really half-assed. The one thing that's kind of fun to watch here is Pedro Pascal chewing the scenery, but even that couldn't save this movie. This is definitely going into F tier for me, and I'm going to be putting it right above Catwoman. Zack Snyder's Justice League. The fact that this isn't the movie we got to begin with still boggles my mind to this day. Yes, it's not a perfect movie. It's got its issues. It is for sure overindulgent and way too long. But I ate up every second of this film. I thought they did an excellent job at exploring the backstories of all of these characters and making it paced out in such a way that it never dragged or felt like it was going too fast. Everything worked really well for me personally. The emotional story beats that were cut out is absolutely criminal. They all really add so much heart to this film. And the last hour of this film felt truly epic. I was blown away by just how massive this felt in comparison. The stakes feel high. I was actually wondering if the team was going to be able to pull it off and survive the attack, making it through it. Steppenwolf is a major upgrade from the theatrical version. He is menacing when he's on screen, but then when you're talking about menacing, you can't forget about Darkseid, who is just such an overwhelming presence the moment he steps foot on screen in any of the scenes of this film. You really do feel like the world is in danger here and only the Justice League can save it. I think Zack Snyder did an amazing job at conveying that with this movie. It does make you wonder what this universe could have been if they just let the people that they hired to do these movies do their own thing instead of having all that studio interference. And yeah, Zack Snyder's Justice League is going up there into A tier, and I'm going to put it right above Birds of Prey, below Batman Begins. The Suicide Squad from James Gunn is perfect. It is just a perfect movie. I love this film. It is everything I have enjoyed about James Gunn's filmography wrapped up into one project. You've got so many unique, interesting characters that you fall in love with by the end of this film. You've also got plenty of other characters that you learn to hate, but you love to hate them. The comedy worked really well for me here, but the more serious moments work as well. This is the DCEU movie I've probably gone back and rewatched the most out of everything here. It is just so much fun. Yeah, I'm gonna be putting The Suicide Squad up there to S tier. It's gonna go above Joker for me and below The Dark Knight. I really do think The Batman is a perfect adaptation of the world's greatest detective. This is everything I love about the Batman character, perfectly portrayed and adapted in one project. I love that this feels like a gritty crime noir film. It definitely feels reminiscent of Seven. Robert Pattinson is perfect as Batman. He is my favorite on-screen Batman, and I can't wait to see how his character grows throughout the upcoming films. Paul Dano is fantastic as the Riddler. They took this character I never cared about once and made him this truly terrifying antagonist that makes you fearful for everyone's lives on screen. I could gush about this movie all day, but I will spare you. I'm going to be putting this up there at S tier, and yes, it is going above The Dark Knight. Oh, Black Adam. Yeah, you definitely changed the hierarchy of DCEU with this one. My lord, you practically killed the universe. Black Adam is as generic as it gets. The best part of this movie is the JSA. It's not even Black Adam, because at the end of the day, Black Adam basically just feels like The Rock playing a less talkative, less jokey version of The Rock. The first time I saw this film in theaters, I was very underwhelmed, but I was like, okay, it's inoffensive, it's fine. And then I watched it again at home, and it just made me like it substantially less. I'm gonna be putting Black Adam in D tier. It goes right above Suicide Squad and below Batman vs. Superman. Remember all those positive things I said about Shazam? Well, Shazam Fury of the Gods decided to take all of those things and flush them down the toilet. I don't know what happened here. Shazam 2 feels like a Nickelodeon movie in all of the worst ways. It's just so stupid. All of those characters you grew to love in the first film, just take that and throw it away. They don't do anything with any of them. They crank up the number of jokes you get here, but decrease the quality of those jokes. You are going to be rolling your eyes more than once. And I still can't get over that Skittles product placement. The fact that they use Skittles to call in unicorns to save the day. This is a movie. It exists. It plays in theaters. Yeah, you're going to F tier. You're gonna go right below Wonder Woman 84. The Flash is a movie that I enjoyed the first time I saw it in theaters, but I never went back to revisit it. And as time's gone by and I've gone back and rewatched various scenes from the movie, I find myself liking it less and less in retrospect. I loved Sasha Calle as Supergirl, and it was a lot of fun seeing Michael Keaton return as the Caped Crusader. But one of the biggest disappointments in this movie was the fact that they brought back Michael Shannon to play Zod, and then they did nothing with that character. How are you going to have one of the best villains in this entire cinematic universe come back for your movie and then just not use him at all? The last act is pretty sloppy as well. It definitely just kind of feels like a bunch of loud, noisy things are happening all at once. While I don't like Ezra Miller as a person, I will say they do a good job as Barry Allen, both versions of the character. Yeah, I think I'm going to put this one in C tier. It's going on the highest end, right above Constantine. I just don't think it's quite B tier. It barely misses the mark. I actually really enjoyed Blue Beetle. It is a totally inoffensive movie that doesn't really do anything that feels consequential to the grand scheme of things, but also at the same time, that totally makes sense because, you know, it was kind of in that limbo where we didn't know if we were going to be continuing the DCEU in a weird reboot way, or if we were just scrapping it all and starting fresh. But as a standalone origin story, it's fun. It's enjoyable. You've got really solid performances all across the board. You've got generic bad guys that just leave no impression on you whatsoever. There's plenty of fun action in this movie. I think it's one of the more enjoyable DCEU movies to watch. And I really loved the family dynamic of this movie. I think it is the heart of the story, and it's really the thing that makes this film stand out amongst the rest. Blue Beetle would be going into B tier for me, and I'm going to be putting it... let's go above Batman 89 and below Batman... Actually, no, let's go above Batman vs. Superman, the Ultimate Edition. So right below Man of Steel. Aquaman 2, they managed to take a movie I didn't really care about to begin with and give it a sequel that I cared about even less. This was the end of the DCEU, and the cinematic universe definitely ends with a whimper. It's just so forgettable. Even the Black Manta character, who was fantastic in that first film and one of the more interesting components, is just so subpar here. It almost feels like they knew there wasn't going to be any more movies in the cinematic universe, so they just kind of, you know, made a movie and put it out there. I'm going to be putting Aquaman 2 in D tier, and it's going to go on the low end. I actually do think it's going to go below Suicide Squad. Yeah, that feels right. And rounding out our tier list, we've got Joker 2, Folia Doo-Doo. What a missed opportunity, man. I don't know what to say about this one. When they announced that this film was going to be a musical, I was genuinely excited. Personally, when they initially announced that Joker was getting a sequel, I wasn't surprised, but I was definitely disappointed by the news. So when it was revealed that it was going to be a musical and they were going in such a drastically different direction with the film, I was way more intrigued by that concept. I love the idea of having Joker and Harley have this love story in Arkham Asylum, or, you know, whatever they want to call it, because it's not Arkham Asylum. And the idea of using the format of a musical to tell the story just sounded way more interesting to me than what we ended up getting here. Sure, there's musical numbers in this movie, but it doesn't feel like they actually wanted to do them. They all feel so half-assed and soulless. There is one good musical number in the entire film, so as a musical, this movie doesn't work. But then it awkwardly decides it wants to be a courtroom drama around the halfway mark of the film. And that has interesting ideas and concepts that pop up here and there when it's initially presented to us. But then they don't fully commit to the idea of it being a courtroom drama, so that falls apart rather quickly and is just really underwhelming. The performances are fine. Lady Gaga does a good job as Harleen Quinzel, even though I feel like she is very underutilized in the role, and that was such a missed opportunity. And Joaquin Phoenix is good as Joker once again. But the worst thing about Joker Folia Doo is retroactively it makes some moments in the first Joker film less impactful with the explanations they give in this film. Like, for example, the first film does a great job at leaving things open for interpretation, making you wonder what's actually real and what isn't. And Joker 2 decides, hey, you know what? Let's just tell you what things were actually happening and what wasn't, which is really disappointing. disappointing. Like, what was the point there? I admire that they tried to do something different here, but it didn't work whatsoever, and that doesn't give it bonus points for me. I'm going to be putting Joker 2 at D tier. It's gonna go on the highest end. It'll go right above Batman vs Superman, the theatrical cut. But man, what a disappointing sequel. And there is my official ranking of these live-action, theatrically released DC movies. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Like, subscribe, and all that YouTube stuff. And how would you personally rank some of these movies? Is there anything on here that you really disagree with? Is there anything on here that you would just slightly tweak? I'd love to know your thoughts on what your favorite DC movie is, as well as your least favorite.